I lectured here a few years ago, which makes me feel extra horrible because then someone in here has heard all my jokes. So forgive me. So anyway, I grew up in Texas, and I was born in 1950, raised in the Church of Christ. So I went to church 8 or more times than there are days in the week. And we prayed all the time. And we prayed for everyone else to go to hell, pretty much. Because we were the lucky ones that were going to heaven. Everyone was going to die forever, where there was gnashing of teeth, where you're dead and you still have teeth to gnash. And so anyway, I grew up with my father painting, and so I wanted to be a painter. I got interested in modern art. By the time I was 10 years old, I was into Picasso and Dali and stuff, and this is my course. And it disturbed my father greatly. The things I was drawing bothered him for some reason, and so he got me a job at a funeral home to try to scare me straight. And dressing corpses didn't really help anything. It made things worse. And so anyway, I went to college. I was dying to be a hippie, and so I got to be a hippie. In 1969, I went to art school in East Texas State in Commerce, Texas. And it was wonderful. I loved art school, and I was such an art nerd. They put me with the graduate students right off the bat. I was a freshman. They put me with the grad students who gave me LSD, and which had its highs and lows, and sidereal motion. And so anyway, that's what for me. But studying art in the 60s was really when painting. It was through the whole 20th century, painting's blowing apart. But by the 60s, more and more things could be defined as part of your practice if you were a painter. And one of the things that I saw when I was in college was Zap comics. And that blew my mind off completely. And so I started doing cartoons. And when I got out of college with a painting degree, I couldn't make any money. So I got a job as a janitor for a while, and then I started doing illustrations, and I became known as an illustrator and as a cartoonist, which I'm not sure if it destroyed my painting career or not. I have a painting career now. Slowly it's gaining momentum, and a couple of years ago, my friend Dan Nadell published this giant book that you don't want to buy because it's too heavy to carry out of the store without hurting your arm any distance. And so that was painting heavy, and so that was a wonderful thing. It's like painting. I do painting, I'm a painter, but I do all these other things, including light shows. So anyway, I don't know. In Texas, where I grew up, all your information comes from the drugstore. So Skillern's drugstore was where I found out about Frank Zappa, and they had I Magazine, which was a teenage magazine, a big format magazine, and I could find out about things. I found out about Zap comics and so on. It was very excitable, and it was wonderful. The 60s is why we're not wearing suits right now. Normally, we would all be wearing hats and suits and dresses and tight shoes and leather shoes and things, but we evolved to be slobs, and it's much better. It's a better way to go, with soft shoes, so we're not having to wear lots of insoles and things. And so anyway, and in Texas, I found out about Japan through Godzilla movies. And I got interested in Japan, and I started copying Japanese art and studying Japanese art and history and so on. And you see it reflected in my art a little bit. But anyway, I don't know. I am so sick of the things I say. And the light's on you so I can see you. And it's making me, I've got a little fever, I think. I think I caught it from Chris. Chris was laughing next to me earlier, and now I'm going down for the count. So I did, I moved to LA. I couldn't get any work in Texas besides being a janitor or working at a print shop. So in 1976, the day after I saw a tornado, I moved to LA. And once I got published, the Japanese people started noticing my work, and that there was affinity between my work and Japanese work. So I started getting reported on in Japan, and was actually brought to Japan in about 81 or 2. And they asked me what I wanted to do when I went there, and I said, well, I'd like to paint a big painting in front of a bunch of people. So they rented an auditorium, and put up this like 6 by 24 foot piece of canvas, and I had to paint it in an hour, and the hour went by like that, but then there was this big painting, and I just had to kind of make it up on the spot. It's very Ed Big Daddy Roth derived, which became many more artists ended up tipping their hat to Roth later. And but anyway, this was a product of going to Japan, and they gave me flowers. They gave me a lot of flowers, and I got something in my eye, and so the pictures look like I'm crying holding the flowers in Japan. And I probably would now. I'd cry easily, but I wasn't crying that day. If you saw the picture, it was a different day I was crying. Also, the guy that brought me to Japan, Mr. Shizuo Ishii, or Ishii Shizuo, he is the guy who brings reggae music to Japan, and he has a reggae music label called Overheat Communications, and he asked me to do an album, if only I could record it. And so this was the album cover for my album called Pray for Smurf, and I was going to call it Smurfy Beaver Shots, but Matt Groening talked me out of that. He thought it was a bad idea. And so this record came out of my music, which I thought was psychedelic country music. But in Japan, they thought it was disco music. And but now I'm in a real band. And one of the great pleasures and surprises in this show was in the little viewing space off of the memorabilia, the self-hype space that's been constructed for Josh and me to hype ourselves endlessly back here. There's actually footage of the band I'm in, Devin, Gary, and Ross, playing in there, which is a great pleasure. And we're going to come back and we're going to play in April on the same bill with Van Dyke Parks. And I was one of the 4 people that bought a Van Dyke Parks album when it came out in the 60s. And they actually ran ads. If you don't know who Van Dyke Parks is, find out and come to the show. He's a national treasure. And his records were so unpopular that the record company of Warner's, I guess it was, ran an ad saying if you were one of the people that bought the record, send your record back, and they would send you 2 fresh albums to trying to seed interest, and that failed too. But Van Dyke has gone on to score many movies and produce many, many people. He's a fantastic person. And Josh White, my collaborator in the show, went to school with Van Dyke Parks, and there's something similar about them. And I'm wondering if it's Pittsburgh they have in common, because they went to school in Pittsburgh, and we'll find out in April, perhaps. In the 50s, we lived in a house trailer and moved around a lot, but we settled in Brownsville, Texas, at the southernmost tip of Texas, finally. And I was really intrigued by and influenced by Mexican culture and the color in Mexican art, and also terrible print jobs for Mexico, where every color is a special mixed color and they're all out of register. So I ended up it affected my art, so out of registration stuff is something I've explored in my work. And I got to this is related to the wallpaper kind of motifs that are in the show, like red and green. If you shine a red light on it, you see the green, and if you shine a green light on it, you see the red, I think conversely, if I'm not mistaken. And so I used to do that in my hallway when my dad was out of town. He was a traveling salesman. He would just come home once a week to beat me and then go back up out on the road. And so anyway, I would sit in the hallway with colored lights and paint these little paintings and flash them so they changed. And so this shows the first time I actually got to realize that idea of designing posters that are meant to change colors when the lights change on them. So this is thank you, MOCAD, again. And got to make these sculptural things. So again, these are old slides. I was sick of the old slides, so I got the older slides out, and I didn't look at them. But there's a lot of weirdos, a lot of Ed Baghdadi Roth stuff in here, which were probably only done for a couple of years back in the early 80s. It's another Mexican wrestler-derived things. And I don't know, I love Mexico. It's fantastic. I love the food. I love Mexican food, Tex-Mex food. It's going to get really boring if I talk about all the food I like. But Mexican wrestlers are still giant in Mexico City, maybe more than ever. And so a painting of Brigitte Bardot when she was very young. And I sold this painting, or gave it, I can't remember. I sold it or gave it to the editor of Slash magazine, the punk rock magazine, and his house burned down. Maybe because he was smoking crack in bed a lot. I'm not sure about that. And if this goes on YouTube, I hope Steve Samioff will not be watching the tape. But so anyway, I repainted the painting for him and gave it to him. But you don't know. Are you just reminding him of the fire? Is it a favor? Have I done a bad thing? I don't know. If you try to do good, sometimes it blows up in your face. So you're better like trying to be neutral, like neither evil nor good. So anyway, there's more of these transparent things. All these paintings for about 30 years. When I was in high school, I painted giant paintings in my garage that were like 8 by 10 feet. And when I was in college, I painted big paintings. Then I got out of college, I didn't have a room anymore, so I painted in my bedroom. And so I did for 30 years paint on 22 by 30 inch, 300-pound watercolor paper, which is wonderful paper. And it's very strong paper. As I discovered 2 years ago, we came home from vacation and my painting storage room had flooded, and 30 years of paintings were sitting in water and they were swollen like sponges. And it was horrifying, but I laid them out on the floor, and after a week, they all went back to normal. So I highly recommend 300-pound Arches watercolor paper for people whose houses flood. And so anyway, a lot of these transparent things. Gee, this is a whole transparent series of things, more transparent things. There's a lot of figuration in my work, but I feel like I'm an abstract painter, really, because it's really, the subject matter is trying to do something, but so are the shapes and the colors and everything. And so, I don't know. It's like, I do comics, and so the comics are really trying to tell you a story, but paintings are only trying to allude to a story or a moment, or trying to activate the space, or trying to mind warp the people standing in front of the paintings, trying to control your mood and take over your mind and make you join a hippie death cult. And if I can only do this, if this is all I've accomplished is making you join a hippie death cult, then I will have done enough, I think. But also, if you're comic shop owners are here tonight, and typically they see this and they go like, oh, Unexpected Comics number 13, it's like, they know who I ripped off. But that's okay, because I don't care. I'll just keep ripping stuff off forever, which was called Post-Modernism, I think, except Post-Modernism had a lot more extra words that you didn't need, because really Post-Modernism was really just, it's about hybridism, I think. The 20th century, it was like, this is my take on it. Don't listen to me and don't try to say this at a party, it won't work. The 20th century was about all these people staking out territories, I'll be the guy that just paints blue. I'll be the guy that paints pink. And I'll be the person that paints, shape things. And I loved all of that. But by the 70s, people had run out of ideas. It was the end. But it really wasn't the end in my stupid metaphor, because in my stupid metaphor, it's like all of these things that were invented in the 20th century were like inventing each key of the piano one by one. The cubist key, the Fauvist key, the vorticist key, all of those movements through conceptualism. And then, so now, past the 70s, it's like, what will you play on the piano? And I think that's where we're at now. What will we play on the piano? And don't try that at a party. It won't work. Gee, it's all this transparent stuff I haven't looked at in years. I hate sports. I hate men. I'm afraid of men. And I'm afraid of sports. I'm afraid of myself a little bit because I'm a man. But you get with men and they go like, when did you change your oil last? Or how much mileage you got on that car? Or what kind of car is that you're driving? I don't know. And who's ahead in baseball? I don't know. I don't even know what season it is. I just tell them, look, I'm into synchronized swimming and tractor drag racing, and that's all I know anything about. And then they'll stop talking to me, which is fine, because I just don't know. I don't know about manly stuff. I'm glad I had a daughter. If I'd had a son, I would be trying to make a poet out of him. Like, put the ball down. What's wrong with you? Go read a book. Go indoors. Stop goofing around. And So anyway, some of these are backwards. It doesn't matter very much. Ben and I straightened most of them out. Also, even though my father was a religious fanatic in the best and worst sense of the word, he's a nice person, Texas style. But in his bedroom, and my mother's bedroom, because people slept together back in those days, sometimes they had separate beds, but they were at least in the same part of the house. And now if you snore, you have to sleep in the other house. But so anyway, even though we were worshiping Jesus every second of our life, and in great fear for our souls every minute, my father had all these men's magazines by the bed that were those post-World War II magazines, where Japanese people are torturing women, or German people are torturing women, or cowboys are torturing women, or women are torturing Japanese, or everyone's torturing each other. And it was fascinating material. So I've done a lot of paintings based on that kind of stuff. And now you have to keep moving, you have to keep moving along, because then someone will publish a book, which they have now. Tashin's published like 1,000 covers of this stuff. So it's like, oh no, I can't steal from this stuff anymore. I'll have to find stuff more obscure to steal from, which usually leads you to terrible places. Like, maybe I should check out Cracker Jacks, prizes. But they're so terrible now. You wouldn't even want to get the prize in Cracker Jacks anymore. It's a pencil topper made out of paper, That's no good. You used to get a magnifying glass that you could start a fire with or kill an ant. You can't do anything with Cracker Jack prizes anymore, even steal from them. This is ripped off from, sorry. The girls in this painting are taken from Jefferson Mockamer, and he was a very famous cartoonist from about the 30s through the 50s, at which point he had degenerated into drawing, $5 cartoons for tiny men's magazines. But I was always fascinated by Jefferson Mockamer women, because they're just wrong. They are so wrong, and it's all the same woman, and her waist is this big, and I don't know if his wife looked like this, or if he dated someone that looked like it. I don't know. But it was very good fodder for a while. So here's more. I was the kid in the 50s in my class that was nuts about dinosaurs, and I had attention deficit or whatever, like everyone now has attention deficit. If I mention attention deficit in my classes, I teach at School of Visual Arts, all the kids raise their hand. I think it means you're creative or something, probably. You have ideas, you don't want to be on the treadmill with everyone. And so I was the dinosaur guy, and I could remember every dinosaur name, but I can't remember anything else. And I could not remember math. I hate numbers, and I'm terrified of numbers, because they're trying to bite each other and stuff. One is okay. One just stands there, and number 2 is sneaking up on them. And number 3 has 2 mouths trying to bite the first 2 numbers, and 4 is all hunched over. And number 5, God knows what's up with 5. And in Texas, they beat you if you can't do math. So I had remedial math in high school over and over and over. I couldn't get past long division. And the tennis coach was the teacher. And he had a great way of swinging a paddle as I gripped the lockers. So now it prevents me from being able to work at McDonald's, because I could not make change. I can't hardly decide how much to tip people, because 3's trying to bite the 2. And when I went to Japan, I worked with this great silkscreen printer named 360, and his name was 360 because he took too much LSD and smelled too many fumes, and he got very confused. This print was done with him. And I saw him years ago. He didn't remember me at all. I don't think he remembers anything, really. But he publishes incredible Japanese printers, artists, and so on, and I got to publish with him, and it was a privilege to go to Japan and hang out and goof around. The painted version of the painting. My later up days really ended as soon as David Sally happened, because he got the copyright, he got the patent on superimposed imagery, because everyone had forgot about Picabia. And I like David Sally's work, but I can't really superimpose anything more. I have to move on. So a lot of times you have to keep moving on. And it's good. If people copy your work, it's a good thing. It means you have a good idea, and you should be encouraged, but you might as well move on and see what else. Or you can move back to the same thing again. This baby was drawn from the original real Gerber baby. a picture in a magazine of the Gerber baby. And I can't really tell the story that goes along with this painting. We'll move on. This was drawn in Ensenada, Mexico in an abandoned shipbuilding. But again, it's an abstract painting, but it's easy for me and for you to go like, oh, it's a crane and a ship, and that's an easy way to talk about it. But really, it's shapes and arrangements and a space and what the color associations do and so on. I had a garage in LA, and I started making little sculptures in my garage. Oh no, that is being filmed, and this will go on the internet. Oh my God, I can't talk about my ex-wives. Okay, we'll pass over that. And I've got a wife now. I'd really like for her to stay with me. If we can just stay together, it would be great. 3's enough. 3's a charm. I'm not sure. We'll find out. We'll come back in April and see if she likes the band and see what happens. But I did in LA. I had a garage, and I was making these sculptural things, and it was wonderful. And I started putting, there was a little space between the fence and the garage, and we had cats. And I started trying to figure out, like, we use a lot of cat litter. I think we're buying a lot of cat litter. And so I started sneaking back there and dumping all the cat litter by the garage. And after a year, there was a gigantic mountain of cat litter and cat poop between the garage and the house. And one day my landlord comes and he knocks on the door. He goes, Gary, who's putting the cat litter in the back by the fence? I said, I have no idea. I don't know. And he said, well, I'm going to put it on the roof of the apartments for drainage gravel. And so he carried all the cat litter and he put it on top of the apartment, and there was a giant windstorm and it blew cat litter all over everything. I used to have slides. I don't think we're going to see them this time out. But again, this is all like 80s stuff. This is all like from around 83, 84. People always advise me to have more texture in my art. It'll look more like art if you put more texture in it. So I tried. Tried putting more texture in. It takes a lot more paint. And I like flat art. I like flat, I don't know, I like what flat. I mean, there's still a lot of paint on, but all the marks are hidden because you're just painting one color over and over and making it flat. So you don't get credit for your work. People don't think you're really working unless they can see every mark. But seeing every mark is not really where it's at. It's like what the whole painting is trying to do to you. And I like this painting. I like it a lot. But I went back to painting flat things after a few years in the 80s. This is another one. This is based on Popeye's Alice the Goon, one of my favorite characters ever, the Goons from early Popeye cartoons. Yes, they should. Let's have a hand for Alice the Goon, one of the most amazing cartoon characters ever, which was a woman with no hair and giant biceps and hairy chest and a strange character. You gotta love Popeye. This was a painting on unstretched canvas that's about the same size as it is there projected. It's somewhere in my house folded up. I haven't seen it in many years. We live in a big house full of art covering up other art. And this too. This at the top, you can't read it, but at the top there's a slogan that says Roz Talks. And in 1979, I wrote a manifesto because I always liked manifestos. I liked Marinetti's manifesto, which was pretty funny, really. Like, let's all go get killed in the name of speed. And but I decided to write my own manifesto, which was kind of a pro-capitalist manifesto. Maybe not in the worst manifestations of capitalism, but it's not really going away. So my notion was, or not within the next 15 minutes. And so I encouraged in my manifesto that artists go into media and try to affect media and try to take the reins of media if they could, mainly because I hated the cartoons in the 70s. They were terrible. Nothing moved. There was no story. They had the same 4 sound effects and one tune that played behind everything. And it was just mind-numbing, and you can destroy generations with this stuff. And so kids 1 year younger than me, their minds were destroyed. I was just old enough to see Fleischer cartoons, and my generation is the greatest generation because we never saw those horrible Popeye cars. We didn't have to pay it. That's not all we saw. But so anyway, that was my manifesto, the Roz Talks manifesto. You can still see it compiled online in manifesto sites and stuff. I thought it would go away, but it didn't. So it's kind of fun. And I really love trying to be an artist in every way I can. I started, again, a drawer, but I love to write. I write poetry of some sort. And again, light was another thing, sculpture, which I've been allowed to do here like I've never had before, so that's fantastic. Women don't seem to like this painting very much, and I'm not surprised. Okay, thank you very much. You're a wonderful person, an understanding person, but I'm not sure if this ever really happened in history. Don't think this is a very realistic painting, but a lot of the paintings that when I use men and women, often I'm using horrible cliches and stereotypes about people because these are the labels we put on ourselves. And so be assured that I am not in a hippie murder cult. They didn't have enough chocolate milk. If they had only had chocolate milk, I might have stayed, but I had to leave. And my wife would have gotten very angry if I'd stayed with the hippie death cult for very long. This was called Nebuchadnezzar's Dream, and it was from some Korean missionary literature. It's backwards, but it's okay. Nebuchadnezzar's Dream, another biblical reference. We won't have to go into that, but I did a series of black and white paintings. This is one of my most popular paintings for some reason. To me, it looks kind of like a Fauvist painting a little bit, maybe. It's called Deadlier Than Male. And it's about a guy buried up to his neck with a cobra nearby. Yet men are worse than cobras because they ask you about your mileage. And here's a happy painting. Now this is just nice and happy. And I used to pick up everything off the ground and paint paintings of it. And this is one of those things I actually found on the ground. The inflatable centipede. I can't find anything subversive about this painting. I think it's just nice. And it's named for an Al Green song, Let's Stay Together, which Obama sang recently. And my wife ran around the room screaming. She was so exciting that and she said, Obama's saying Let's Stay Together by Al Green. You've got to watch this. But he only sang like one line. I thought he was going to do the whole song or something. But anyway, it's a good start. Futuristic car. It looks a tiny bit like Kenny Scharf's work. And again, this is being recorded. Everyone loves Kenny Scharf. I love Kenny Scharf. I don't know him very well. But when I first met him, he accused me of ripping him off for Pee-wee's Playhouse. And I didn't, because I'm 10 years older than Kenny Scharf. And so I decided to paint some paintings that look more like Kenny Scharf paintings as revenge, which include the second Red Hot Chili Peppers album cover I did, which, look at that, it looks more like a Kenny Scharf than anything else I ever did. And but anyway, I like his work. Everyone loves him. I love him in absentia, if that's a word. This is actually a truck parked in front of my house in L.A. And a lot of my things are from media, but some things are from, a truck pulls in front of your house and looks good. So paint a picture of it. Furniture in the Holy Place is what it's called. The titles, I usually look around the room for a title, which is a good way to do it. Just look around the room and you'll find the title for your work. And that solves a lot of problems. Here Come the Hippies. This is an ode to my painting teacher's work. He painted a lot of paintings like this, except his were realistic, but they're always like naked people with guitars dancing and drinking heavily. And he was great. He put John Cage's Silence in my hands. He put Lumpy Gravy by the Mothers of Invention in my hands. He gave me like Stravinsky's essays. And he was a great painting teacher, but he did effectively drink himself to death. He was a wonderful guy, but don't drink yourself to death. Only drink 6 drinks. Don't drink, a case of beer and 5 bottles of scotch at the same moment. Space it out a little bit. But I'm saying this because I don't really like alcohol very much. I order White Russians because they're like chocolate milk. And it embarrasses my wife. And, but anyway, moving along. Another dinosaur. Anyway, I don't know. What happened was, I guess, you go to art school and you get free, or you're even in high school and you get freedom on Saturday, unless you're doing your homework, which I wasn't. And I would sit around on Saturdays going like, what can I do with myself? I have a day, I don't know what to do. And then through art history, I noticed the Cobra movement where people kind of reverted to their childhood for inspiration. And I realized at that moment, wow, I still like all the stuff I liked as a child, which unfortunately leads to the imagery in this show, which is very infantile. And I don't understand that, but it won't go away. So that's why I paint little happy flowers and butterflies and stuff, and I don't understand it. But it started with dinosaurs and stuff I liked, monsters, spacemen. But to me, it's all abstraction, so that's my excuse. Here's a 2-panel painting. It's a little bit smaller than this. I asked my daughter if she wanted one of my paintings. She chose this one. I was like, something is weird. There's something weird about my daughter choosing this painting. I don't know. But she can have it. She's in Cooper Union studying art. We'll see what she does. This is a positive painting. There's nothing bad about this, I don't think. It's just a nice painting. A watermelon in the desert. He has enough water to get him out of he can hike out of the desert because he's full of water. It's like, it's no danger. He could get sunstroke, but it's a black sun. It's okay. He'll be okay. This is a painting. Oh, wow, I forgot to put the little people in it. It started out, as a feminist painting, because here's the guy, the evil guy's chained to a stake with a gorilla skull on it, and he's been shot and he's dying, and the women are dancing for joy because he can't do all that man stuff like leave the toilet up and everything that we do that's horrible. And then I put other people in it. I forgot about those other people. This one's rolled up in my house too for probably 10 years. And it's a celebration of life and liveliness. My favorite toy, if you can look on YouTube, I get them confused, and see the commercial for the Great Garloo, which was my favorite toy that I had when I was a kid. And it looked kind of like this. It was a monster, and you could drive it around and pick up things and crush little cities made out of Lincoln logs and stuff. It also looks like the Spookorama guy from Coney Island. And so this is kind of an ode, but it's very ominous. This monster coming ashore. It's like a dream image. And a cyclops, I don't know. Can't explain everything. In fact, I don't really like paintings that are very clear. If a painting is too clear, it's like getting a punchline, Oh, I don't have to look at this anymore, I get it. And it's more interesting to me to see paintings that are kind of quixotic or make you feel weird. And I guess that's what I'm trying to do. Again, in my comic strips, I'm trying to tell stories, or I'm doing experimental comics or something. But in my paintings, I'm not really trying to tell a literal story. I'm sorry, I already said that. Here's one called Where to Find Your Pot of Gold. At the end of the rainbow. And we have the rainbow in here. We found a device at the lighting guy who was fantastic, who worked on this show, found a machine that generates a rainbow. That's all it does. And so we have it in there. It's a very high definition rainbow. He was baptized, so he's going straight to heaven, unlike the people that didn't quite get under the water. If your hair was sticking out, sorry, you're going to hell. But if you got under the water completely, you're fine. Don't worry if they hang you. Hang yourself. Who cares? You'll go straight to heaven and they'll give you a harp, or a French horn at worst, itchy wings. With mites, birds have mites. When you have your wings, you have to go into angel dip every month or so, to get rid of the mites. They never talk about angel mites very much in the Bible. wide painting, kind of suggests corrugated tin a little bit with figures dancing in front of it. I like the guy on the far right. He's just a bystander. He's about to be shot. He's just going by with his hands in his pockets. All this is happening. I think you're involved, whether you like it or not, you're involved. You might not get out alive. You can't ignore what's going on and just put your hands in your pockets and whistle out of the composition. This one's a mate of that painting. The little guy got shot in the other painting, so he does not appear in this painting. This painting is about that size. I think it's still rolled up in my house somewhere. Maybe it's stretched. The paintings pile up. If you're a painter, rooms fill up with paintings and they're laying on each other and you hope they're okay and everything. And if you're a sculptor, like, God help you, because you're just going to need too much room. You're going to need massive amounts of room. Paintings are flat. You can roll them up, put them in a corner. Maybe if you're lucky, someone will take them home and want to wake up every morning and drink orange juice in front of them, which is ideal. I mean, people are like, artists are so serious, you know? It's like, they better not drink orange juice in front of my painting, you know? But I'll be happy if they drink orange juice in front of my painting. It'd be great. It'd be great. This one too. This is about duplicity, the human race, betrayal, which is a bad thing, betrayal. I'm part Choctaw Indian. I'm a member of the Choctaw tribe, which allows me to paint Indians being tortured by human-faced snakes with a good conscience. I don't know about the eye boogers. I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to do that or not yet. Okay, so I guess we're going to reach some cartoon stuff. So anyway, like I said, and I don't know how long I've been talking. It could have been days for now. I don't know. But I don't know. You just scream when you've had enough and leave. Have you had enough? That's my cover. The year? 79, 80, something like that. And so I moved to LA. I got published in Wet magazine, which was like an art party magazine. And there's a new book collecting the history of Wet magazine. I don't know if you ever saw it. It's a really neat magazine. And that happened. Then the next year, punk rock happened. And I thought, my work will fit in with this. I feel like I might have found a home for my work in this punk rock movement, but I weren't sure if they were Nazis or what, you know. And I asked my friend, and they said, no, they're just a bunch of artists. And so I went over to Slash magazine, and they were a bunch of artists. And which led to me getting published. They gave me a page every month in Slash magazine, and then in a couple of years, Art Spiegelman and Francoise Mouly noticed my work and started publishing me in Raw magazine, which was a wonderful thing, because artists want attention. I mean, they're doing it. I want attention. Other artists, maybe other artists don't want attention, but I want some kind of attention. You want it to go somewhere. Can it help us evolve? We need help. We need help. We need artists to help us out, because we're still in the Stone Age. We're completely in the Stone Age here, and it's kind of horrifying, but we're moving ahead. We're moving on. We're not wearing hats. Not all, I mean, you know, like the same kind of hat. And so anyway, a poetry press published this character the first. It was called Occupant X, and it was just a weird kind of combination of Jack Kirby meets Boone Raku puppets or something. And so anyway, that was wonderful to be discovered by the Spiegelmans and Francoise Mouly. They published my work. They were great editors. They gave me time and attention. And a couple of years later, they published a collection of my work that came in a corrugated cardboard cover. And then later it was collected in Japan. And this is the Japanese version. My agent in Japan, Mr. Ishii, called me up after this was published. And he said, Gary, his English is not great, and my Japanese does not exist. And so he said, Gary, we want to do another book. And I went, wow, that's fantastic. You want to do another book? You've just done this fantastic book. When do you want it? 2 months. I'm like, oh my God, you want me to draw a whole new book in 2 months? Okay, I'll try. So I found a windshield of a wrecked car on the street, and I put it on my desk with a light under it to use as a light table, and I started drawing a graphic novel that became called Cola Madness. And so I drew like a maniac for 2 months, and then I called up Mr. Ishii, and I said, I'm very sorry, but I could not finish the book. I need 1 more month to finish the book. And he said, what are you talking about? And I said, well, you said you wanted to do another book. And he said, well, we were going to reprint this book. And so meanwhile, I'd done like a 100, 200-page graphic novel. And so he tried to publish it in Japan, but it was too strange, so it laid around for 18 years and finally got published. And thank God for all the wonderful people that have helped me in my career. Matt Groening and I met at a wet party, and he remembers it different. I think I wrote him a fan letter because I saw his work in Wet Magazine, and I think he walked up and handed me a comic at a party and started to walk away, and I said, wait a minute, I like your work, let's talk, and we became friends. And we were both broke at the time, and as he mentions in interviews, we used to share hamburgers at Astro Burger, well, chili cheeseburgers at Astro Burger. And then he did The Simpsons. I knew he was going to do, well, I did the Pee-wee show first, and so I was like, wow, I got to, we're infiltrating media. I got to infiltrate media a little bit. And then later he did The Simpsons and made a lot of money and started his own comic book company, and so he published a series of my Jimbo comics. And so Jimbo's this character I've been drawing for like 35 years now. He's still wearing a loincloth, and he looks gay. If he's gay, fine. I would love him whether he's gay or straight or bi. I don't care, whatever he is. But he's a fairly nice person. But the reason he's wearing a loincloth, and I probably said this when I was in Detroit before, in Cub Scouts, they made us dress up in loincloths. We were naked, except we had loincloths on, and they made us dance around a red light bulb and a fan blowing red cellophane up in the air for the campfire. And Garlou, my toy, he had a loincloth. And I'm drawing this character for 35 years wearing a loincloth. I don't understand it. If it just hadn't have been for that Cub Scout thing, he'd probably be wearing pants or something. I don't know. But he's okay. There he is in the loincloth again, running away from a tank. And anyway, I love comics, but the characters are alive to me, and I don't like bad things to happen to them, so my comics are very boring. It's because you need bad things to happen in stories. You need for there to be risk and loss and betrayal and all those things, and I like my characters. So I made one evil character, Henry Webb, and he's the psychotic murderer in my comics that causes all the trouble. There's my record, Pray for Smurf. A clock I designed for Parco. So, I mean, I got to, as a designer, I've got to design a lot of things, shoes, T-shirts, and things that are fun to do. And that was a clock, battery-powered clock. It's very good. Here's a T-shirt. I don't know where this is from. I have no idea. It's printed too low. It's right. It's going to be on your stomach, right? If you're wearing this, it's like, well, I got a T-shirt right on my belly. So I don't know. You might have to like cut a section out of it. A lighter. It's backwards. Oh, it's made for ambulance attendants. So if you see it in your rearview mirror, it's right. You can get a light. Hey, you got a light? Yeah, slow up. But I don't know. I smoked cigarettes for 10 years, and it was horrible. If you're smoking, stop. You only have to be angry and suffer for 1 solid year, every minute for a year, because cigarettes, as you know, it's a habit. Habits that make you feel good are really dangerous, but habits like cigarettes don't make you feel good, yet your body will get up and go to the 7-Eleven and buy cigarettes when you're not looking, and then you'll be smoking again. So I did suffer getting rid of cigarettes, but I'm glad. Now my daughter smokes. Now she's going to have to quit. All my students smoke. I don't understand what happened. This was from the book I drew that didn't get published in Japan, Cola Madness, but it was made into stationery and things. And after Pee-wee's Playhouse, I got a lot of people approached me to do things that didn't happen. But this thing did happen. It was a tiny playroom in the Paramount Hotel on, 83rd Street or something in New York. And it's tiny. It looks big because I've used mirrors and so on. And that doghouse is really only half of a doghouse, the thing on the left. But people kept walking into the mirror, so we had to move it away from the mirror. And the sculptures, I mean, this is a kid's kid's playroom. But really, it's a stoner room. And really, all these things are things I saw on a really horrible, bad acid trip in 1973. And if you took, I think I'll take acid and I'll see God. But I saw Sylvester mutants and Tweety Bird monsters and scrubbing bubble commercials from the future that hadn't been made yet, which means mental illness, probably. But I'm still ruled by a lot of things I saw in acid that if I see them, oh no, a fire helmet and false teeth, I must go the other way. And here's another view. I knew they probably wouldn't take care of the aquariums, so I just put toys in the aquariums. And Tweety Bird, Tweety Pie. Okay, I think these are towards the end of the slides, mercifully. And this is what I did in my studio that you can do in your room at home. And my light shows were really started more sincerely when halogen lights were invented, because halogen lights make nice hard shadows. And so I would build a thing in my studio that would be like a giant mobile just made out of crap, everything in the world like glued together and tied together. It would hang from a string, and I put a fan on it so it would turn. Then I put 2 or 3 halogen lights on it with colored filters on it, and then this is the output. This is what it looked like on my wall. It's not a picture of the mobile, it's a picture of the wall behind the mobile. And if you put music on with it, your mind tries to organize that. And then suddenly it seems like it makes sense. So almost a light show will go with any kind of music. And it was this kind of stuff that led me to collaborate with Josh White. And if you have a tiny bit of patience, I'll tell you one more story, which was, I love certain, now, and tell me if I've just said this in this lecture, because I have no memory whatsoever, that things I liked, and please, I liked hippie light shows, psychedelic posters, and psychedelic music. Now, have I told you all this before? Okay, thank God. And so I decided to make a magic ritual that would kickstart the 60s over again, the things I liked about the 60s, because free love, I missed it. I missed out on free love. So I don't know if that was good or bad. It sounds complicated to me. One girl at a time is very complicated. I can't imagine guys and girls and more. I don't know. That wouldn't work for me. So anyway, so I built a little light show theater in my studio, and it was only maybe 15 feet square, and it was divided by a wall that I made, and I had a little aperture and opening, and my light show was only this big. And there's documents of this in the little history room behind us. And so I made my light show on a little piece of vellum, and I would invite people to come in and see the light show, and I had a ritual where there was an orange lamp hanging outside in the hall, and I would say, when the orange lamp comes in, feel your way into the room, which was painted solid black, and I'd made seats out of old newspapers that were bound together because I wasn't throwing them away. And I hid M&Ms and Dr. Peppers in there so you could discover them when you crawled in. And it burned incense to make it hippie-like. And so then people would come in, and I would turn on all these strobe lights, and they had a seizure or not. We found out right then. And then I would be backstage, as I call it, behind the screen, with flashlights on rubber bands and Christmas lights and Mylar and little cut paper snowflakes and stuff, and that's what my light show was like this. So I did that for about a year for maybe 200 people, one by one, or 3 people at a time. And I kept a little guest register, and at so that was my music was like, people were throwing away beat boxes because the CDs had happened. And when the latch on the CD player breaks, it's no good anymore because it won't work. The plastic latch breaks, throw it away. So a lot of beat boxes, and I just played random tapes. And I had my light show I was doing. And I put up flyers at the local record shop, Earwax in Williamsburg, which are on the wall in there. There's a whole bunch of little flyers. And that was my butterfly wing that would re-invoke the 60s. And so 9/11 happened, and I just decided to cry for a couple of years and not do that anymore. And so I threw the light show down, tore it apart and threw it in the corner. Then after a couple of years, my friend Joe Amrine at Pierogi Gallery asked me to do it in his performance space. So for a month, I did about 50 shows of my light show. And I was leaving one day with a pack of batteries, because you're using flashlights, you have a lot of batteries that are worn out. So I came out from behind the screen with my battery pack, my sack, battery sack, not pack. And there was a gentleman in an ascot with his legs crossed and his hands in his lap. And he said, "Hello, I'm Joshua White. I think I could help you with your light show." And then we started collaborating after that. So my magic worked. I did re-invoke the 60s, and I did start a process whereby I could help Josh begin to do light shows again, which we continue to do on a bigger and bigger scale or on different venues. And it's been a wonderful association. And so sometimes things will work. Everything won't work, but you can try some things and see what happens. And it just began with a mobile and a bunch of halogen lights, and it re-invoked the 60s, and now we can all join hippie death cults. It'll be great. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.